All right.
Yeah.
Ashutosh, let's get
Hi,
started.
Akshay.
Hi.
Thank you so much, Akshay, for doing this. I've been meaning to have this kind of conversation with you for a long time
Right.
because I know that you are very active in this field and you help people develop the right kind of mindset.
Right.
And a few conversations that we had made me think and reflect on the journey that I've had, the professional journey that I've had so far, wherein I've had some issues when it comes to matters of confidence, or sometimes, a need for self-validation, even to speak in situations. And something that you told about sparked a reflection in me that it could be somewhere related to self-worth
Correct.
and how we see ourselves, how we
Right.
feel about ourselves.
Right. Right.
And so, from that reflection, it came across that I wanted to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome.
Right.
And because I felt that the situation that I felt in myself, and also I see it very common these days. So, the reason we are having this conversation is not only for my benefit, but to have a conversation that can benefit everyone who listens to
Correct.
this.
Correct.
So,
Absolutely.
imposter syndrome is something that we are hearing quite a lot about these days. And this is something I think is affecting a great many people.
Mm.
And we never used to hear about this earlier, but now I think there is more
Correct.
awareness and there is a lot of social media influence as well, which because of which we hear about this. So I
Correct.
have noted some points, Akshay, and I would
Sure.
like to
Sure. Sure.
maybe talk a little bit about that, and then you can, tell me about this, how you feel
Correct.
about
Correct.
it.
Absolutely.
So first
Absolutely.
of all, yeah. So first of all, Akshay, what is imposter syndrome? How common is it? And like I said, we have only begun hearing about it in the last few years.
Mm. Mm.
Why now?
Right.
And
Correct.
as I understand, in imposter syndrome, a person may feel that they are not deserving of or up to the expectations that
Correct.
their outer situation or condition has placed upon them. So,
Correct.
like for example, I gave my example. I saw a period in my previous company of initial slow growth, and then there was a period of rapid growth. And I found myself placed in situation which I had never even thought of, and
Mm.
probably many people would desire that kind of situation. And it was a very good, I would say, growth that I saw. But somewhere I felt that, I'm too inexperienced for this, that, it is something maybe that I'm not good enough, or maybe
Mm.
I'm not an expert. When people used to call me an expert, I felt that, oh, is it me? How can I am expert?
Correct.
So I thought that these could be related to imposter syndrome.
Correct.
And names can be somewhat confusing, so I'm not sure if calling it imposter syndrome helps or it confuses or just puts the phenomenon into a narrow frame. And that is why I wanted to understand from you, because you talk about this a lot. What do you think
Correct.
is the deeper cause of the problem?
Correct.
Maybe we can
Correct.
explore that a little bit.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Akshay, I see you touch upon self-worth in many of your talks and messages.
Right.
And I was wondering if imposter syndrome could really be an issue of self-worth.
Mm.
What do you think? What is self-worth? Actually, do we as human beings need to have a long list of achievements and a lot of external validation in order to feel a sense of self-worth? Or is self-worth something that is intrinsic and independent of our outward circumstances?
Correct.
When a child is born, they have this intrinsic self-worth and they are joyful by nature.
Yep.
So it's not a question of developing self-worth,
Mm.
but something happens along the way that depletes our self-worth when we have it naturally. When we become dependent on external validation, we feel insufficient in ourselves, as though we are not good enough or deserving enough. So this is not, and this not only causes psychological and emotional anguish,
Mm.
but it's also kind of sorrow, which comes from limiting ourselves, restricting ourselves, and not finding the self-expression and joy that should be natural to us.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely.
Is it also somehow connected to the prevailing spirit and the so-called industry of self-improvement, which suggests to us that you are not good enough? Or is it a result of our parents, teachers, superiors at work who, in trying to instill this spirit of self improvement, cause the most damage to one's self worth? They don't say be aware of yourself or observe yourself, how you think, how you
Mm.
behave,
Correct.
observe what interests you and what you're good at, so that through self discovery and self learning, we gain the confidence and know who we are and where we stand, which is what I think what self
Yeah.
worth is, right?
Correct. Correct.
Instead, through society's emphasis on self improvement, which involves, I think, self
Yeah.
improvement, I feel it involves a sort of self condemnation, a disapproval of who we are,
Yeah.
seeking validation from others, on how much we have improved, where we have reached, and we keep this endless cycle of self
Correct.
doubt and
Correct.
conformity to existing societal culture,
Mm.
which may be entirely superficial and wrong. And also, I wanted to, I'm sorry, these are too
No,
many
no, I
things,
think go ahead.
but
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I thought I'll just,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, share all the thoughts that I had, and then we can have a discussion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
some people more susceptible to imposter syndrome compared to others? Are certain professions more prone to it? Because I don't see doctors having imposter syndrome. I see it mostly in corporate professionals
Mm.
where we don't have the necessary kind of skill or training that we go
Correct.
through, and we become vice presidents or we become something. So, could certain professions be more susceptible to it? And on the one hand, we have people who are, very capable, experienced, talented, who suffer from imposter syndrome despite being capable.
Yeah.
Then there are people who may not be as maybe, capable, but they have mastered the art of appearances and they know how to seem confident. The other angle to look at this is self-worth, and by extension, imposter syndrome, somehow a manifestation of low energy. What could that mean? Is it also related to our physical health in some way? And could certain physical behaviors or habits be playing a role in this? I'm just trying to think of all possible
Correct.
angles
Correct. Correct.
that could be
Yeah.
influencing
Yeah.
this,
Yeah. Yeah.
Akshay.
Yeah.
And finally, I would like to ask you, what can one do to address this issue of self-worth so that one is free from problems like imposter syndrome and is able to creatively express oneself with honesty and integrity and find excellence and greater meaning in one's
Correct.
work?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah,
Thanks. Thanks, Ashutosh.
I know that's a
I
little bit
think
long, but
no, no. I think that's perfectly fine. Yeah, there
yeah,
were quite a few questions, but
yeah,
we'll take it, as it comes. We'll mainly focus on understanding what is imposter syndrome, why is it that it's kind of becoming more popular, say, of late, as compared to the last 10 years. You've probably never heard of it. And how is it connected to self-worth? What is self-worth? Uh, and do we have it? Do you need to develop it? So I think some valid questions you raised, and I loved how you articulated it. You've also kind of spoken about the influence of early life experiences through your parents, teachers, guardians, friends. Uh, linking it to your self-worth. Also, you touched upon the professions, uh, or professionals rather, who may be more susceptible to this. Uh, so I would. I'll probably first, and the last question is, how do you overcome the imposter syndrome? So we'll take all these. So I would probably, before I get into what imposter syndrome is, I would like to talk about the professionals and the professions that are more susceptible. So there's nothing, there's no hard and fast rule that doctors don't have, imposter syndrome. I'm glad that they don't show it, because obviously there is, it's the question of someone's life and death. So imagine, a doctor who's probably going to be operating on you, and he's probably thinking, am I the right person to operate on you? You imagine the condition of the patient, right? So imposter syndrome, there's no, if that's the right word, there's no fixed profession or professional that are, people who are more susceptible to imposter syndrome. It is something, as you rightly pointed out, it is uh, a result of our childhood experiences. And it is again a result of some of the unaddressed emotional issues, if I may say, that results into something known as the imposter syndrome or known as I'm not good enough syndrome. Yeah. So why now? Why not uh, say 10 years ago? So this imposter syndrome has been there with us humans for ages. It's just that we've given it a name. I believe, if I'm not wrong, I think towards the end of, I think the late 70s or early 80s, one of the psychologists probably coined this term, the imposter syndrome. And I believe it does have connection to one of the psychological concepts which says, there's a concept called as the basic life position. I would want to, I think I'll just briefly touch upon it. So there are four basic life positions that we live by. The first is we are born with this state. So I wouldn't go as per the numbers given by the psychological society. I'll probably focus on talking about the default mindset we all are born with, the default life position we are born with, which is I am okay, you are okay. So you may have your own flaws, you may have strengths. I have my flaws, I have my strengths. I'm accepting myself the way I am. I'm accepting you as for what you are, for you, who you are. So when you reach this stage, there is peace. While you may have arguments, you may get into a conflict situation, but because of this mindset, there is no judgment. And people may say, oh, it's quite impossible to reach that stage, or it's quite tough to reach that stage. I would say, I think when you train yourself, when you train your mind, getting there is not tough. But yes, you need to go through a lot of stages. The second stage is I am okay, you are not okay. Where this is the stage where people try to impose their superiority complex on the other person. But deep down, people who come across as narcissistic, or people who come across as arrogant or aggressive, trying to kind of put you down. So deep down, these people may be suffering from inferiority complex, but they have not accepted that, and they want to mask it to their superiority complex. So which is why it's I am not okay, you're okay. The third one is I am not okay, you're okay, which is your imposter syndrome, and we'll be talking about it. The fourth one being I am not okay, you're not okay. This is the worst state to be in, and typically, if you reach this state, then it there are cases if it reaches the extreme, people may have to be admitted to the asylum.
Mm.
We won't
It's
talk about
like
it.
a
Yeah,
state of psychosis,
yeah,
probably.
absolutely, absolutely. So we'll probably stick to the third one, which is the imposter syndrome. I am not okay, you're okay. So
Yeah.
this, I believe, this has got to do with your childhood, like any other case.
Mm.
So our environment, our social environment, be it the parents, your teachers and friends, because as a child you are exposed to receiving messages from your loved ones. So even if they someone says that, oh, you've done well, but you could have done better. So what is
Mm.
imagine the message the person gets. So just the other day, someone was telling me that her sister was discussing her daughter's art. So the daughter was very happy, and she came running to her mother, a 10-year-old daughter, saying, "Mom, see, look at my art." So now the mother looked at it and she said, "Okay, good, but you could have done better. So the next time I want you to score maybe 10 on 10, but she had scored 8
Mm.
on 10."
Mm.
So what happens is when you probably ignore the efforts your child has put into, that all the
Mm.
child is looking for is love, is looking for acknowledgement. So when you
Mm.
don't get acknowledgement, you start discounting yourself. So discounting again, it's a psychological term. So you start discounting yourself.
Or
So
can we say, when parents, or let's say our bosses, they have certain expectations of us, and when they
absolutely,
try to impose their expectations
yeah,
on us of how certain things are have to be. I mean, of course, we have to work, we have to get better at things, but there are many ways of doing it, and
yeah,
everybody has their own way of expressing themselves, their own way of learning.
right,
But probably when we expect them to be a certain way, the
yeah,
way we think is the right way, that could
correct,
be probably the beginning of this
correct,
from a young
correct,
early age, or for a young professional, that
absolutely,
causes this to
absolutely, yeah,
happen.
exactly, absolutely. If you look at the example of this little kid, her mother expected her to score 10 on 10. The child scored 8 on 10.
Mm,
So now the child perhaps might be thinking that I'm not good enough because I've not scored 10 on 10. My mom
mm,
expected me to score that. I did not, which means I'm not good enough. Now, had
mm,
the child been, probably had the mother said that, hey, great, lovely, 8, lovely, great. Let's talk about the good things that you did. How did you manage to get 8 on 10? And then maybe
mm,
discuss how do you get to 9 on 10? How do you get to 10 on 10? So this is
mm,
something that parents or teachers need to understand, that if you're passing on the messages to your students or to your kids, you need to
mm,
understand that the child is absorbing everything, and when the child grows up, the child perhaps may have, so by the age of 7, kids determine their personality. Right? Even I
mm,
remember as a child, uh, when I was so my dad had sent me to MIG Cricket Club to learn cricket. So on the first day, when the coach looked at me, he said in Hindi, he said, "Tumko cricket kabhi nahi aayega." I said, "Okay, fine." But so I told him, "Yeah, sir, which is why I'm here to learn." Every day he would hammer this into my head, saying, "Tumko cricket nahi aayega." And
mm,
after the fourth month, I lost it. I lost interest. I went up to
mm,
him. I threw my bat. He was there. He was standing there. I just threw my bat to him, and I said, "मेरे को cricket नहीं खेलना. I don't want to play cricket." And he said, "See, तुमको बोला तो तुमको cricket नहीं आएगा. I told you."
mhm.
So
Yeah,
till date, till date, so that is one thing I've never liked cricket, because the way I was introduced to the world of cricket, I never enjoyed. Even though as a kid I loved playing cricket, but after that I was like, no, I don't want to. And now if I reflect, perhaps I could have responded in a way. Maybe I could have spoken to my father saying that this is what he's saying. I want to learn. Maybe put me to some other academy. I could have
yeah,
done that, right?
yeah,
So that's what happens when you reflect on what. So what that situation was trying to teach me was that I had to speak up, take a stand for myself. So
yeah.
imposter
And
syndrome is something that imposter, obviously it's deceiving. So through this syndrome, we are deceiving ourselves. We're not deceiving the world, we're deceiving ourselves.
mm,
We're telling ourselves that we are not good enough. Now, to give you an example, I've been working with this leader who's the VP, group, maybe the same level as you, uh, in a media company, and this guy's done really well for himself. Uh, Getting networking, sales, growing business is something that comes naturally to him. But
mm,
what happens is when his CEO or COO, when these people are around during the meeting, he's unable to speak. He starts questioning and doubting his own performance.
mm,
And then there have been instances where the CEO had to take
mm,
over the discussion. So again, then he keeps questioning himself. So through the
mm,
discussions again, what he's realized that as a child, every time he would ask a question, every time he would give his suggestions or ideas, people would mock at him. people who would question him. And these were his, I would say, parents. These were his grandparents, his uncles, and his
Mm.
aunts. So he's gone through a lot as a child, and it stayed with him. So professionally, he is doing really well. He may be doing well, but deep down, he's questioning himself. And imposter syndrome is that, okay, I'm getting crores of business for my company, but when I have to present in the presence of my CEO, I'm a failure. So do I deserve this? I don't deserve to be the VP of my company. So he discusses this with his CEO, and the CEO laughs it off, saying, "Hey, that's okay. Yeah. As long as you're getting me the business, I have no problem." So, and the CEO is also offered that, don't worry, you go ahead. I won't come for the meeting. But then again he starts questioning himself. Oh, is the CEO backing out because I have asked? When will I ever learn? So then he again calls the CEO. He again falters. He again questions. So it gets into a loop because
Mm.
what we need to do is we need to reflect on what's happening. What is that inner voice that is asking you to fail? And when you know that it's not true, you've done well. You've probably given the company X number of growth over the last year or on a quarterly basis. So what is stopping you? So typically, based on my experience, my own experience and my experience working with people, what I realized is there could be three reasons. One is there is a there is an anger that's directed towards yourself. So an anger that you couldn't take care of yourself as a child, right?
Mm.
So that's the anger. So you don't want to grow. You're punishing yourself in a way by cursing yourself, saying that you're not good enough. Or the second one is that you're looking for a rescuer to handhold you, to take you through the
Mm.
process. That's
Mm.
the second one. And the third one is you're completely lost. And
Mm.
even asking for help is something that it doesn't come naturally to you. So again, you will
Mm.
question yourself. I'm asking for help, so I'm a failure because that's what you've been taught. So the thing is,
Yeah.
you need to break these patterns.
Yeah. And Akshay, while listening to you, another thing came to my mind. Like you gave the example of that person who said that you will never learn cricket, right? You'll
Correct,
never be good at cricket.
correct,
So, and when we talk about imposter syndrome, we also say that it is about a voice that tells us that you are
yeah,
not good enough.
correct,
Could it also be a factor of we not having a true voice of ourselves and that we absorb these voices from outside
correct,
and think that this is our voice.
yeah,
We don't have our own voice, and the voices of others, we think that that is the true voice, that is our voice. I mean, we somewhere we start thinking of that as our own voice when it is something that has been told to us from outside
correct,
that you are
correct,
not good enough, or that feeling that oh somebody is laughing at you, or somebody is thinking that oh you are not that great. It's not our own voice. So the thing, like you mentioned, the third reason, maybe you are
correct,
lost. Maybe we
right,
are lost because we don't know where our own voice is. Maybe we
absolutely.
don't have our own voice. And just before this conversation, we were briefly talking about Jay Shankar, external
Mhm.
affair
Mhm.
minister.
Yes, yes,
People come at him from all kinds of angles. They try to trap him in all kinds of things. And their arguments, the way they come at him, they sound very logical, right? Everything
Mhm.
is very logical when you look at it from a certain point of view. But that guy is so sure of himself. That guy has so much of self-worth that he
Correct,
doesn't fall into that trap, that he
right,
doesn't believe the logic of that what they are saying, and he has the capability of listening to his own voice, and he's able to perfectly calmly able to reason it out.
Mm.
And also, we know how India was a few years back.
Correct,
We were always on a back foot, right?
yeah,
Saying,
yeah,
thinking that we were not good enough. I mean, it's ingrained in Indians that
absolutely, absolutely,
Western or others are much superior and that we are inferior.
correct,
But this guy, and maybe others as well in the recent administration, they have totally, inverted the whole thing. They are coming up with so much of self-worth, a sense of self-worth of India. Like you could see this guy saying that, oh, we are a nation of 1.3 billion. We
Mm.
are the fifth largest economy in the world. So that is
Right.
knowing yourself. And that is
Absolutely.
where self-worth emerges from.
Right.
And that is what maybe we could touch upon. Like, why do we not know ourselves? Why do we not
Absolutely.
have our own voice that tells us, oh, what this guy is saying is not the truth.
Correct.
What I know about myself, that is the truth. And that's what I'm
Correct.
going to follow.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely. I think bang on with those insights. Like Mr. Jaishankar, obviously, as you rightly said, he does have a very high self-worth. He knows himself. But more than that, he knows that he's answerable to the nation. That's what his calling in life is. And when someone is aligned with their own self, aligned with their calling in life, they will be resilient. They will be confident enough to respond to questions, respond to the situation, respond to people, irrespective of how challenging the situation of people are. And as speaking of Indians, I think as Indians we need to teach our children one thing. What we teach so far is look at that boy or look at that girl. She's come first. She's put first in your class. What have you been doing? Why are you wasting your time? Instead of saying such things, instead of comparing your child to someone else, you need to teach your child to reflect. You need to teach your child to believe in themselves. So, like, if you had a chance to watch the video or the live call with five conscious parents, one of the parents, a very dear friend, Dr. Arvind Panikar, what he was saying was, whenever his daughter comes to him saying that, my cousin is really good at sports and I'm not, so he often tells her that it's yeah, she's good, but so are you. You're good at arts. Why don't you look at that? If you want to get into sports, look at the sport that you like. But based on our discussions, I know that you're not into sports. You're into reading. You're into art. So maybe you may want to focus on that. So by teaching a child to focus on their strengths, by teaching your child to also have an understanding of the weaknesses, this is where you will perhaps help them work on their self-worth. Because as you had rightly pointed out, self-worth is knowing who you truly are, right from your
Yes. And
childhood.
that's
That is what is needed.
right. And this also reminds me to one talk I saw of J. Krishnamurti,
Okay.
wherein he's sitting with school students and he's asking them, okay, what do you think about examinations? So the students tell them that examinations help us know how good we are.
Mm.
That's what the students tell him. So he tells them that, will an examination tell you how good you are? And why do you compare? And he says that if you don't compare yourself, then you are what you are. Are you less than anyone else if you don't compare yourself? So why do you
Mm.
compare at all? That's his question.
Absolutely.
And which
Absolutely.
makes us think that, why do we compare ourselves? Why do we want to be better than others? Why can't we be ourselves?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I think I still remember. I think you would watch, videos of J. Krishnamurti and his teachings, his readings. Obviously, it takes time for people to understand. But whatever he had said, whatever he says, obviously absolutely makes sense because we've kind of created a balloon or a cloud around the self-awareness. So you need to be self-aware. Oh, emotional intelligence. You need to be emotionally intelligent. What is emotional intelligence? It is knowing what you're feeling. It is being with your feeling, staying with those feelings.
Mm.
Whenever you feel hurt physically, you obviously you be with that feeling, right? Either you go to the doctor,
Yes.
you apply some ointment, or you take some medicines. But what about your
Yeah.
emotions? What about your feelings, right?
Right. Because
Like I've known people. sorry, I'm sorry to cut you. So, but I've known people that they feel guilty when they miss a workout, which is fine. That's
Mm.
consistency, that's discipline. But these are the same people when they are hurt, they refuse to work on themselves. Why? Because working on your emotional challenges, working on your mental health is still a taboo. Though obviously things are changing, people are becoming more open to it. But it's not about mental health or emotional health. It's about your health. We need to start looking at things spiritually. And by spirituality or spiritual well-being, I'm not saying the religious chanting. All I'm saying is that spiritualism is knowing your true self. That spirit, the soul that we say, it's the energy, right? And as you rightly said at the start, that is self-worth connected to the low energy. To some extent, it
Mm.
is because when people put you down, when people demean you, when people tag you or label you, you feel bad. And when you feel bad, your energy drops. When the energy drops, that drop stays with you. The energy,
Mm.
it's the energy that it 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 gets stuck. And when the
Yeah,
energy gets stuck, obviously you start feeling stuck in life.
right.
So,
And that feeling of low energy, feeling low, that is the feeling that comes back again and again whenever you face yourself, whenever you find yourself low in self-worth, or whenever there is an imposter syndrome. That's exactly the feeling that comes back, the feeling of low energy, that feeling of low, which is something that your brain has recorded and
it's a
made it a part
pattern
of
that gets
yourself.
stored, yes.
Yeah. It has made it a part of yourself, and it just that pattern gets repeated. And even when the situation is not happening right now,
Yeah,
you're not in that situation. I don't have to give a
correct,
presentation,
correct,
but just if I'm thinking about it again, that thing comes
correct.
and makes you feel like that.
Yeah, yeah,
So that is the something that the work that we have to do, like you mentioning, at the spiritual, at the subconscious level, because
yeah.
just by maybe talking about it, it
Mm.
is not going to go away. There has to
No,
be a deeper action on it
correct,
that
correct.
has to happen.
Right, absolutely. So it's about again, it boils down to your own reflection, reflecting on what you're feeling, from
Mm.
within. And I think the one thing that I keep doing is if I'm feeling bad about something, even I've observed that the patterns keep repeating, and when they repeat, so repeating patterns is a sign that you need to work on those unaddressed emotions, unaddressed episodes from your life. So what you need to do is let me give you an example. Maybe I could talk about my own example if I could. So one of the repeated patterns obviously was public speaking. Now you may have observed me, in the past. I would, speaking in front of people was something that uh, did not come naturally to me. I would run away from discussion, from presentation, and that had a connection to my childhood. It's only when I started working on myself I realized it. A fear of being judged, fear of being ridiculed. So I remember as a child, I was forced to go up on the stage. My junior KG, uh, they dressed me up like a Catholic bride, and I
Mm.
was sent, up on the stage. So when I went up on the stage, there were so many people staring at me, and I started crying. And to my surprise, I won the third prize because they thought that Catholic bride crying on the
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah.
But that stayed with me. Right? That fear stayed with me that people are looking at. And
Mm.
another thing, what I've also observed is that our fears are also connected to a mother's womb. So when the child is in the mother's womb, the mother goes through a lot of emotion, and which is why people say that you need to keep the mother happy, ensure that the surroundings are positive because it does impact the child. So if there are certain fears the mother is carrying, it gets passed on to the mother to the child. Even feelings of low self-worth, even
Mm.
your inferiority complex may get passed on to the child,
Mm. Mm.
right? Naturally, we are all born with a very high self-worth, It's only based on those messages from people. We start believing that whatever the parents are telling us, whatever the teachers are saying, that may not be true. Like I remember my parents keep telling me that during the junior KG interview, uh, junior KG or nursery interview, the priest who was interviewing me, he had kept a gun in front of me, and all I had to tell him that this was a gun. Now I did
Mm.
not tell him that. What I did was I picked up the gun and I started shooting at him,
Mm.
telling him that this is a gun. So he had a smile on his face. And my mom says my dad was getting very nervous. I vaguely remember that. And then he said, okay, then he kept a Jeep. So all I had to tell him that this is a car. So what did I do? I explained it to him again through signs. I said, so after the interview, what I'm told is dad was very angry, very nervous, saying that, we taught him so much, but this boy, he failed us. Now I don't remember what my father may have said, but as a child, I absorbed the energy. So I
Mm.
did have uh, the intelligence to tell the priest what the gun was, what the car was. But because of the messages I received as a child, I absorbed those messages. Those messages get into your subconscious, and
Mm.
eventually they keep, coming back at you like patterns.
Yeah.
So that was perhaps when I reflect back on it, it tells me that that could be my first maybe encounter with low self-worth to the messages we received, from my parents.
Yeah.
It could be. So,
So
hmm.
yeah, go on, Akshay.
Yeah, no, no. So I think
So,
that's what
mm.
we need to. So when you know that your parents obviously their intent was good, their intent was not to hurt you or demean you. Intent was that, oh, if you fail, you won't get the admission. I ended up getting the admission. The police called up saying that he liked the child's confidence, right? But the damage is already done. The child has already observed the fearful energy,
Mm.
the mistrust that the
Yeah.
child is not good enough.
Yeah. And the strange factor in all of this is, and many times I get it also from others, I give a presentation of something and I feel that I've done a terrible job. I
Hmm.
feel that, I whatever I could do, I couldn't do. But I get the feedback that it was not bad.
Hmm.
And so many times I may be doing something right, but internally I'm judging myself as I'm not doing it right.
Correct.
So this is another problem that plagues, I think, people who have this feeling of imposter syndrome and
Hmm.
this issue with self-worth, that we are
Yeah.
not able to judge whether what we are doing is right or wrong, and we are perpetually uh, you know in search for some kind of validation or
Yeah.
something that tells
Validation.
us, okay,
Validation is the right word. Yes.
whether you are doing what you're doing is right or no
Correct.
wrong
Correct.
according to the established norms.
Hmm.
And maybe and the fact that we are so trained to act according to established
Correct.
norms
Correct.
is again something that is causing us self doubt and self worth, because that is not letting us be ourselves. And what is
Correct.
the social established norm? Maybe
Yeah.
there's no such thing as established norm. Everybody is acting in chaos, and that collective chaos is the established norm.
Correct. Absolutely. Right. Yeah. Huh.
You know?
No, no, absolutely, absolutely. So it's
Yeah.
the validation is the right word, and right from my childhood, we've been probably trained to seek validation from the world. Typically the typical statement that log kya kahenge. That is the base of your imposter syndrome. What will people say? People are judging me. But what about you judging yourself? What about the fact that you're judging yourself already?
Yeah.
Right?
But
You are the
Akshay,
one who's judging yourself. Yeah,
but Akshay, isn't that such an illusion? Because no one else is sure about what they are doing. Everybody probably is,
absolutely.
you know, inwardly they're feeling the same way. And
It
so
is
why are we taking so much of load? So maybe
correct.
it's an illusion that is maybe very easy to dismiss in one way
Correct.
because it is so flimsy, but still it has such a hold on ourselves that we again and again,
Mm.
fall into its trap.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Why do we care about
Absolutely.
what people think? Who are the people and maybe their lives, they are also, so as confused as we are,
Correct.
right? So why we
Absolutely.
give it so much important?
Right.
And when their opinions probably have nothing to do with our
Yeah.
day-to-day lives,
Yes.
right?
Because of the internal narrative that you are better than me. So when
Mm,
the narrative is I'm not good enough, but you are definitely better than me.
mm,
So because of that, I'm looking at you saying that, oh, maybe am I saying the right thing? Is this person judging me? And when the person says, great job, yeah, fantastic. And I was like, Arey, हाँ, yeah, I've done really well. I could have, why was I worrying so much?
but is
And
the
when you're
other
faced with the
person
same situation, it just comes up again.
right? And is other person judging us, or is it ourselves who is always judging
No, no, I
ourselves?
think it is, we are judging ourselves.
I think it is our
I
internal judge that is always on.
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember, I think I'd signed up with Toastmasters for about a year to improve my public speaking. And
Mm.
every time I went up on the stage, I would feel very nervous. I had
Mhm.
practiced, like my first speech was where I had to talk about myself. I went blank. There were about 40 people there, and I went blank. Not even a single person judged me.
Yeah, yeah.
And towards
And
the
why do
end, so
we?
I spoke,
Yeah,
and after I spoke, they all obviously clap for you because obviously that's the norm. But no one judges you. They are there to learn. So one thing my mentor keeps telling me is that no one cares because they are all there to learn. While you're there giving your speech, people are busy thinking about what they have to cook when they go back home, what they have to tell their boss the next day. There are millions of thoughts running in their head. Then, of the 10 people, two people may be genuinely listening to you, but they're listening to you to help you, or they're listening to help themselves. They're not there to judge you, be it your Toastmasters or be it any presentation that you may be giving or the program that you may be giving. And I think that kind of stayed with me. So every time I feel nervous, it's not that I don't feel nervous now. I do feel nervous, but I have kind of accepted that nervousness. I've realized that by coming across as anxious, it's not making me any less. The people who come for the session, they are here to learn, uh, and I'm there to maybe share whatever that I may have learned. I'm also there to learn from them. They come from
yeah.
different industries, so there's so much to learn. So one thing I've realized that when you get that learning aspect into every conversation, I think that
Mm.
fear gradually starts to decline or
Yeah.
reduce.
Another thing just struck me was that why do we want to be right? Why do we
Yeah.
want to uh, be perfect in what we say?
Right.
And isn't that a burden that we are taking on ourselves? Isn't that burden causing the anxiousness
Yeah.
that, oh, what if I say something wrong? What if I am not able to think straight? What will? So why do we want to be right? And
Hmm.
if we are not ready to be wrong, then how are we going to learn? How are we going to and it again it brings me to a thinking that do we want ourselves to become machines? Do we want ourselves to become like pre-programmed machine who know
Hmm.
everything in advance and they are
Right.
just plattering on and you
Correct.
can see some people can just open their mouth, they can just you know
Absolutely.
and you can see that they are not thinking and feeling at all, they are just
Correct.
like machines. And do we want
Absolutely.
to be like that? Maybe we don't want to be like that. And somewhere this anxiousness is partly a product of the pressure that we are putting our
Correct.
expectations. We are the wrong expectations of always being right or knowing everything in advance. Because right now when we are having this conversation, it's not something that I have thought about it before.
Hmm.
It's not something
Right.
I've written and I'm that writing.
Correct.
And
Correct.
if I did it that way, it would not be this interesting. It would not be this enriching.
Correct.
So probably the need to know everything in advance, and the fear of unknown is also one of the factors I
Yeah,
feel that probably plays a part in this.
absolutely. It does. It does. I think it all boils down to three main emotions, I would say: fear, shame, and guilt.
Yeah.
When you let go of these three emotions, you will be in a better position to allow yourself to make mistakes, allow yourself to fail, learn from those mistakes and failures, and grow. Because when there's no fear, when there's no shame, and there's no guilt, there's nothing, or no one in this world can stop you. And now people may say, "Oh yeah, he said that done." No, I would say that just understand your fears, just decode your fears.
Hmm.
Something I often say in my talks or my sessions, to people is that we are all born with just two innate fears. One is fear of loud noise and the fear of falling. As a child, you may have observed your daughter as well.
Yeah.
Uh, all other fears are fears that we've kind of borrowed from people.
Hmm.
Fear of failure is basically don't make mistakes, don't fail. You cannot fail. You cannot score low marks. People will judge you. Nobody will ever
Hmm.
give you a job. So this fear, so I think that's the fear that's so you are probably you start feeling that, oh, if you have to survive, you need to be your best version. You need to be
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that the feeling of survival, I think let's keep that for the jungle. Let that be with the animals. Even your artificial intelligence says that, right? Chat GPT. If you put in something that Chat GPT doesn't have, Chat GPT will respond saying, "I'm sorry, I
Maybe
do
it
not
makes
have."
something up. But
Yeah,
mostly it makes something
it
up.
makes something up, absolutely.
Like
Right,
human beings,
right,
even
right.
if they don't know anything, they'll just
Yeah, yeah.
say
So
anything.
I think the beauty is telling people, "I'm sorry, I probably don't
I
have an
don't
answer
know.
to it. I don't
Yes.
know."
I think
Right.
that's a very
I don't know.
intelligent thing to say. I don't know.
Absolutely. I
And
don't
there's
know.
no shame in
Yeah,
that. And in fact,
absolutely.
what I've noticed is that when I'm struggling with a problem or trying to learn something, understand something that is totally new, I don't know anything about it. It appears so
Correct.
complicated. And when I say that I don't know and really feel it, then I
Right.
start learning about it,
Correct. Correct.
automatically the thing starts become easier. But if I say that, oh, I know this, I know
Correct.
that,
Correct.
then I'm never able to get a feel of it. In fact,
Correct.
when you have to learn something fundamentally, you have to begin from that state that you don't know anything about it.
Correct.
If you
Correct.
start from a position that you know about this subject, then you cannot explore.
Correct. 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 So I think this reminds me of you know one of our favorite leaders that we respect. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah. So I remember back in our good old CS days when the
yeah.
team had already settled. So one thing he told me during the performance appraisal is that you don't have to be a Superman. You need to be Superman's father. So what he meant was, and I
Mm,
knew that you and Anisha obviously were the strongest in the team. So he asked me a question: "Are you scared?" I said, "No, I'm not scared. I'm only worried that if I don't have answers to their questions, or if I'm not able to give them direction, what would they think about it?" So he said, "Why are you worried about it?" And that's when that's the leadership call you need to take. That if the people reporting to you are better than you, you've made the right choice because that's how things need to be.
mm,
People who are reporting into you need to be better than you. And it is absolutely fine to say that you don't have answers to their questions. It's absolutely fine to say that no, you don't have a vision for now. Maybe we'll take it as it comes. And he also reminded that during open houses, he would also say it openly that if people would ask him, what's the vision 3 years down the line, he would say, "I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't know."
mm.
And there was nothing wrong with it. As long as you know the intent, as long as you know that you don't have an answer right now for that
Yeah,
moment, it doesn't
yeah.
make you any less.
Yeah, and
Right?
you acknowledge that. You don't,
Absolutely, absolutely,
most of the times we don't know, and we don't acknowledge that we don't know. So I think
absolutely.
acknowledgement and
Yeah,
feeling the fact of not knowing
correct.
something is very
Correct.
important, because I think that's when the doors really open.
It is. It is. It is. Correct. No,
And Akshay,
absolutely.
I wanted to touch upon another topic that came into my mind in relation to this. Does fear also have a positive side to it? Positive in the sense, a natural, unnecessary side to it. Like, for
Mm,
example, we see when a baby grows up, if he doesn't have fear of falling down, he will just fall down. I mean, very small
mm,
babies do fall down, but when they grow up, they have this fear which protects them.
mm,
And in relation to what we have been talking about with imposter syndrome and self-worth and other things, when many times, you know, we feel a certain sense of fear. Could fear in this case also be a signal that says to us that be awake, think and speak.
mm.
Don't be a machine. Don't be an automaton. Think.
Correct,
Because
correct.
if we had no fear, if we had no sense of uh, a void, no sense of a void where we don't know what to say,
Mm,
where we have to maybe think out things and feel out things.
correct,
If everything was like prearranged, then we would
correct,
just be a machine. So I think that somewhere that fear or that something has a role to
right.
play. The only
Yes,
thing is that how we deal with it. If we deal with it with a sense of shrinking away from it, then it turns into imposter syndrome. But if we acknowledge it and help take its help to become awake and say, oh,
correct,
I'm going to stay with this, I'm going to see the whole thing in
correct,
clarity and think out things for myself, then I
mm,
think probably it does what it's supposed to do.
correct,
And that's
correct,
how
correct,
probably what we can say we become
correct.
intelligent,
Right,
right?
right, right. Correct. I think, as you rightly, said, it's all about acknowledging that fear. And I think more than fear, I believe it's about being cautious. So I would not call it positive fear. I would call it being cautious. Uh, you need to be cautious while making decisions, or even as a child. The child needs to. Well, obviously, the child wouldn't know what is being cautious. We need to teach the
Right.
child. But as
Hmm.
I said, I think it's a natural feeling of
It has its role.
it has its
Yeah.
role. So I think it's the fear
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
falling, fear of loud noise. And as the
Yeah.
child grows, the child decides whether or not to live with that fear or whether to let that fear go. So it's up to us.
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
train the child? So fear does fear have a positive role to play? I would say I think it's about being cautious, not a
It's
positive
being
role.
cautious,
And
it's being
and
attentive.
and it's perfectly fine to be fearful. Our
Yeah.
understanding of being fearless doesn't mean that you've stopped fearing. Being fearless
Yeah.
means you started acknowledging your fear. You know that
Yes.
it's a fear, um, and as long
So,
as you're
so
not allowing your fear to control you, I think it's perfectly
right.
fine.
When we think of handling our emotions, we generally think of how we kill or suppress an emotion.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that's
yeah.
not how exactly we have to think of it. We have to think of it in a more intelligent way. We have to let it express itself without being overwhelmed by it.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what.
And what does that take, Akshay, from you? I would like to learn. What would you say to people who come to you? And we've looked at it, the whole landscape of the problem.
Correct.
But what exactly, apart from talking about it, I know talking about it, it does release a few knots within in yourself when you're able to see the problem more clearly. But
Correct.
somewhere, the thing doesn't go away completely. So what does
Mm,
it take
mm.
for us to kind of be able to live with it more in harmony and
Correct.
intelligently?
Right. Right. Yeah. So I think so when people say that when you start working on yourself, you will start untangling all those knots. I mean, if you're able to do it, great. But what you need to do is you need to just focus on untangling the knots that are really holding you back. So if it's fear that's holding you back, you need to reflect on that fear, and you need to give yourself the time to let that fear go. And when I say letting the fear go, doesn't mean you will suddenly start feeling carefree or suddenly start feeling fearless. Uh, what you will start observing from within is that a level of calmness where you know that okay, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling fearful. Let me feel that fear. Let me feel that anxious. Right? Let me feel that anxiety. So to give you an example, if you're making a presentation and if you're say presenting in front of say maybe 1,000 people, so it's quite natural for us to feel anxious. So it's acknowledging that anxiety that yes, I may probably fumble or I may freeze, and it's perfectly fine, right? It's that acknowledgement will allow you to calm down, and that calmness will eventually allow you to take that action. Now, how do you reach that calmness? How do you reach that clarity? Is by sitting with that chaos. You need to sit within that storm. You need to sit within that chaos and allow that chaos to pass. Allow those clouds to pass. And that's all that is needed.
Right, right. Many times people say that the way to get over these things is practice, or
Yeah.
but it's not just about practice. It's about,
No,
like you
it's
rightly
about
said.
bringing. It's about bringing in that awareness. So every time you become aware of your feeling, of your
Yeah,
thoughts, I think that's it. You
right.
just need to be aware of. You don't have to. And when I say awareness, it's the awareness minus the judgment, minus the question, minus the doubt. So
Yeah,
that's what.
awareness that you are feeling fear,
Yeah,
that you're
yeah,
going through fear, what fear is doing. The whole thing. I think that's what you mean, and
absolutely.
and definitely I can relate to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It is.
And just one point I
What
think,
else?
Akshay, we
Sure,
have yet
sure,
to
sure,
touch upon
sure,
is,
sure, sure.
are there any physical reasons also that could possibly contribute to low self-worth, low energy? Because somewhere I've seen you also touch upon, emotions affecting our
Yeah,
different physical organs, body,
correct, correct,
and the body affecting the emotions and vice versa.
correct.
So because both
Right,
are, it's an interconnected system,
right,
right?
right, 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 right. So I think physical symptoms affecting self-worth, I don't see a direct connection there. Connection definitely is through the mind, right? It's through the mind. So everything and everything that we feel has a direct connection to the physical symptom or the physical feeling. So whatever you think, again, it's thoughts, your emotions are energy,
Mm,
right? It's energy in
mm,
motion. So if there is, so typically I've generally observed, and you may also find research that anything to do with your self-worth has a connection to your gut, because again the gut is connected to your brain, and self-worth is again doubting your own capabilities. It is our inability to digest our thoughts. So the gut obviously starts giving you problems. People
mm.
typically connect it to the food, indigestion, but indigestion of thoughts, indigestion of emotions also leads to your gut related issues.
Yeah, but now they are saying that gut is actually the second brain. There
It
is a
is, it
direct
is.
connection between gut
Yes.
and the brain.
And brain,
So
yes.
I see that's a lot of
Yeah.
valid points there.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah, most of these emotions are felt in the gut.
It is. It is. It is. It is.
Yeah.
So your anger, your fear. So like anger is also uh, there is a deep connection to your liver. So
Hmm.
that's the and anger is fire, liver is fire. So that's
Hmm.
the connection. So yeah, I think to answer your question, self-worth uh, is our key to success.
Hmm.
And while it's difficult to define true potential, potential again is going beyond your own capabilities, and that happens only when you're clear about who you truly are. That's when you'll be able to really up your potential, and when you actually get the clarity on your true self, finding or unlocking or unleashing your potential, it's the natural outcome. Yes, it takes its own course, but you
Hmm.
need to be consistent. You need to be disciplined enough to be working on yourself. And when I say working on yourself, all it needs is 15 minutes of your time every day where you're reflecting on uh, what you're feeling about yourself.
Hmm.
There are millions of thoughts passing
Yeah,
every
digesting
day.
your emotions basically, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
That's what you
And
mentioned.
and
Yes.
it's perfectly fine to not have a productive day. It's perfectly fine to make mistakes. it's perfectly fine to, you know, clear your emails on one particular day, and there's no reason. And it's also perfectly fine to end your work day at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. It's perfectly fine to do that.
Mm.
Right? What matters is that you need to know when to put that full stop.
Yeah.
This
So
is
what my takeaway from this conversation, Akshay, is that what is most important is awareness,
correct,
self-awareness, to be able to be aware of your fear at the time that you are feeling the fear, to feel the full effect of it, the full impact of it. That's how you end up resolving that fear,
correct,
and
correct,
spending some time on a daily basis with yourself, just by yourself, like you mentioned, 15 minutes, not doing anything in particular, but just seeing how you feel, digesting all your emotions, your thoughts. That helps to clear out our mind and digest the thoughts. It's similar to how we digest food. We also need to digest our emotions and have and clear the mind,
correct,
basically. Like we have to
correct,
clear the gut on a daily basis. We have to clear
yes,
our mind as well,
correct,
because only then we'll be able to have a higher level of energy, and
correct,
therefore
correct,
a higher level of sense worth.
right, right,
So that's
right,
been my takeaway for this from this conversation, Akshay. Thank you
correct.
so much.
Thank
I
you,
know there's a
Ashutosh.
lot to discuss, and
It
hope
is,
to
it is.
discuss with you again in another
Yes, I think
conversation, probably.
we should, you know, have a series on,
Yeah,
you know, probably training your mind, or, you know, kind of working on your self-worth. I think we need to make it into a
right,
series.
right,
So
right.
thank you for this conversation. And I loved what you said. You know, it's cleaning your gut and cleaning your mind, right,
Yeah.
on a daily basis. Absolutely. So
Thank you
great.
so
Thank
much,
you.
Akshay.
Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Great speaking
Thank
with
you.
you.
Yes, same here. Thank you.